There are moments in the history of thought when a single mind reorients how an entire culture understands itself and the world. Such was the case with Immanuel Kant, the 18th-century German philosopher whose groundbreaking work on epistemology, his theory of knowledge, not only redefined the philosophical landscape of his time but continues to echo across disciplines today. Kant's contribution was not merely a solution to a philosophical problem. It was, in his own words, a Copernican revolution in human thinking. Just as Copernicus had shown that the Earth revolves around the Sun, overturning centuries of geocentric cosmology, Kant argued that it is not the mind that conforms to the world, but the world, as we know it, that conforms to the mind. Born in Königsberg in 1724, Kant lived a life of rigorous routine and deep contemplation. By the time he published his seminal work, Critique of Pure Reason, 1781, the philosophical world had been locked in a fierce debate between two camps: the rationalists, who held that knowledge derives from pure reason, and the empiricists, who claimed that all knowledge originates in experience. Kant's genius lay in transcending this divide. He saw in both traditions partial truths, yet also crucial blind spots. From rationalism, he adopted the conviction that certain truths could be known independently of experience. From empiricism, he took the insight that knowledge must be grounded in sensory input. What he rejected in both was the notion that either side alone could account for the full nature of human understanding. Kant began with a simple but profound question: how is knowledge possible? In asking this, he was not looking for an inventory of facts, nor was he interested in metaphysical speculation about unknowable realities. Rather, he sought to uncover the conditions under which knowledge itself arises. His strategy was to examine the faculties of the mind that make knowledge possible at all. In this way, epistemology became not a theory about the world per se, but a theory about how we come to know any world at all. It was a shift in perspective that would define the entire course of modern philosophy. To understand Kant's theory of knowledge, one must first appreciate his distinction between two sources of cognition: sensibility and understanding. Sensibility, for Kant, refers to our capacity to receive impressions, what we might call raw experience. These impressions are given to us through the senses, and they constitute the material of our thoughts. But sensibility alone, Kant argued, is not enough. Experience, in its raw form, is a chaotic stream of sensations. For it to become meaningful, it must be organized. This is where understanding comes into play. The mind does not passively receive sensory data. It actively processes, structures, and interprets it. Kant illustrated this interplay through the metaphor of a blind man who suddenly gains sight. While he might be overwhelmed by a flood of new colors and shapes, these sensations would remain meaningless unless he could learn to relate them to one another, to perceive spatial relations, and to identify objects. In other words, the sensations must be synthesized into coherent perceptions. This synthesis is not given by the world. It is imposed by the mind. Here, Kant made one of his most radical claims: that the mind contributes essential structures to experience. According to him, there are forms of intuition, namely space and time, that are not derived from the world but are conditions under which the world appears to us. Space and time, for Kant, are not empirical properties of things in themselves. They are the lenses through which we experience all things. Everything we perceive is shaped by these forms. They are not features of objects, but of our sensibility. Beyond these forms of intuition, Kant argued that the mind also applies concepts, or what he called categories, to synthesize experience into knowledge. These categories include notions such as unity, plurality, causality, necessity, and possibility. They are not learned from experience but are rather preconditions of experience itself. For example, we do not learn causality by observing repeated sequences of events, as David Hume claimed. Instead, we are only able to recognize a sequence as causal because the concept of causality is already embedded in the structure of our understanding. In this way, Kant believed he could answer the skepticism of Hume, who had argued that we have no rational basis for believing in causation, only habitual expectation. The implication of Kant's position is enormous. We do not merely discover the world. We, in a sense, construct it. Or more precisely, we construct the appearance of the world as it is for us, not as it is in itself. This leads to another key distinction in Kantian epistemology, the difference between phenomena and noumena. Phenomena are the appearances of things, the way objects present themselves to our senses and are structured by our mental faculties. Noumena, by contrast, are things in themselves, objects as they exist independently of our perception. Kant was emphatic that we can have no knowledge of noumena. Our cognitive faculties are limited to the domain of experience, which is always already mediated by space, time, and the categories. To attempt to know the world as it is in itself is to overstep the boundaries of human reason. This is not a limitation to be lamented, Kant insisted, but one to be acknowledged as the proper condition of finite beings like ourselves. In drawing these boundaries, he believed we make room for faith, for moral freedom, and for the dignity of human agency. Indeed, in his critique of practical reason, Kant extended his epistemological insights into the moral realm. While theoretical reason is constrained by what can be experienced, practical reason, our faculty for moral judgment, operates on a different plane. It does not describe what is but prescribes what ought to be. The freedom that we cannot prove in the natural world, we must nonetheless presuppose in the moral world. Thus, Kant reconciled human dignity with epistemic humility. We may not know everything, but we can act as if certain higher truths, such as freedom, God, and immortality, are real because such beliefs are necessary for moral action. This dual framework of limits and of autonomy characterizes the elegance and power of Kant's epistemology. He did not aim to demolish the edifice of metaphysics, but to rebuild it on new, secure foundations. By investigating the conditions of possible experience, he offered a model of knowledge that was both rigorous and respectful of the mind's creative capacities. In doing so, he opened the door to future philosophical inquiry, not as a quest for absolute knowledge, but as a disciplined exploration of what can be known and what must be believed. The legacy of Kant's epistemology is vast. In the centuries following his work, entire philosophical movements arose either in response to or in continuation of his ideas. German idealism, for instance, took Kant's insights and sought to expand them into a comprehensive system of knowledge. Philosophers such as Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel reinterpreted the Kantian self as not merely a passive subject of experience but as an active force that unfolds history and spirit. Later, phenomenologists like Husserl and Heidegger revisited Kant's project with a focus on lived experience and being. In the Anglo-American tradition, Kant's emphasis on the structures of the mind influenced logical positivism, cognitive science, and contemporary theories of perception and language. Even today, debates about artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and consciousness often echo Kantian questions. Can a machine truly know? What structures make experience intelligible? Is there a difference between information processing and understanding? These questions remain rooted in the Kantian insight that knowledge is not merely about data collection, but about the conditions that make meaning possible. What makes Kant's epistemology enduring is not just its intellectual precision but its ethical resonance. By placing the knowing subject at the center of his philosophy, Kant elevated the role of human autonomy and responsibility. We are not merely products of the world. We are also its interpreters. And in recognizing the limits of our cognition, we cultivate the humility necessary for dialogue, for tolerance, and for the pursuit of wisdom. In the end, Kant's work offers not just a theory of knowledge, but a philosophy of maturity. As he wrote in his famous essay, "What is Enlightenment?" Enlightenment is the courage to use one's own understanding without the guidance of another. His epistemology, then, is a call to self-trust, not as arrogance, but as a recognition of the active role we play in shaping the world we inhabit. By shifting the focus of philosophy from objects to subjects, from things in themselves to things as they appear to us, Kant inaugurated a new way of thinking that continues to shape the modern intellectual imagination. In acknowledging both the powers and the limits of reason, he charted a middle course between dogmatism and skepticism, between naivety and despair. His epistemology remains one of the most profound explorations of what it means to know, and, in doing so, what it means to be human. Thank you for accompanying. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below, so we can discuss. Wish you and your family good health.